Do you want to create a memorable brand narrative through video? I mean, it's 2024. Who doesn't? Video is one of the top ways to build your brand, to connect with your audience, and to leave lasting impressions. So if you're interested in learning about the importance of storytelling in building your brand, whether that's a corporate brand, a nonprofit, or your personal brand, then join me on October 12th for my presentation, Brand Stories in Motion, Creating a Memorable Video Narrative. I'm Stephen Picanza. I'm a brand builder, a podcast host, and I'm here to help you win.
Hi, welcome. Fantastic to have you all joining us today for today's exciting workshop with Stephen Picanza, Brand Stories in Motion, Crafting a Memorable Video Narrative. Now, that's one hell of an exciting workshop we've got coming up. Stephen is a co-founder of the Latin and Code. He's an experienced entrepreneur and brand strategist, and he's 15 years of experience. He teaches at Drexel University in Philadelphia, and we're really excited to have Stephen with us today. There's so much we're going to learn from today. The topic's an amazing topic. I think we're going to learn a lot about brands and storytelling from Stephen. And in addition to that, Stephen has some fantastic giveaways for us today. Stephen is going to be giving us a 30-minute free 30-minute appraisal with you guys for seven of you that are out there. So stay till the end to be able to get your 30-minute consultation with Stephen. And for those of you that don't manage to get the 30-minute consultation, Stephen will have an amazing download for branding for you available, and you just need to contact Stephen by email. We'll send you details of that as we move along. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Stephen and thank you very much for joining us on today's workshop. Stephen.
Kevin, my man, thank you for inviting me. And what's up, everyone? I am Stephen Picanza, and I am stoked to be here today. And let me just get myself situated for my optimal presenting style. And I'm stoked to be here today. I'm coming at you live from the great state of New Jersey, right outside Philadelphia. And I want to chat with you all about this idea of brand stories in motion, right? Not stagnant, not static, but in motion, all about crafting a memorable video narrative, right? Something that's going to stay in the minds of your ideal customers or whoever it is you're looking to connect out there. Excellent. So again, this is me. I am a brand advisor and a consultant. I work with startups and nonprofits. I work a lot in the personal brand space, entrepreneurs, aspiring bloggers, people who want to create an executive kind of brand out there for themselves as a coach and a consultant. I also work with a lot of agencies as a strategy consultant. They bring me in to help them get projects over the finish line or to bring forward the big idea. And I'm a content creator and a studio owner. And with that, I am also, a 3-tier certified brand architect with my mentor and good friend, Marty Newmeyer, and his Level C program. So as you can imagine, I live and breathe brand, and it is my purpose and mission to really help, as many people as I can also understand the power of their brand.
Yeah, we get your energy, Stephen. That's amazing. And just before we let Stephen really bring the content to you, I just want to say to all of you, if you have any questions, pop them into the chat. Anything you want to know from Stephen, any questions you have on his presentation, pop them into the chat. Stephen will address your questions as we move along, or if not, at the end of today's session, And just let us know when you're joining us from. We're interested to
Yeah.
see. Steven's from Jersey. We see that we've got people coming in from different places today. I see already we have from Chicago. And just let us know when you're joining from. Please, be happy to hear.
Yeah. And we're going to get interactive here. I also want to know, and this will make sense next, but start thinking about it. What is your favorite pizza topping? And if you say pineapple, you might be thrown out. No, I'm just kidding. But I do want to know what your favorite pizza topping is, because in addition to what I do for work and to show I'm not just a robot, an AI generated robot, I love to hang out with my family and my little son. I love to drink wine, as I'm doing here with my wife. And more importantly, I make pizza. In fact, I have 4 doughs that I'm going to be making after this in my pizza oven afterwards. So I want to see what everyone is thinking of.
Anybody in the Jersey area is welcome to contact Steven
Right, if you
for
live
a
in New
great
Jersey and you want pizza, come on over. Eggplant, garlic, bacon, and pineapple, says Diane. Mushrooms. Oh, wow. We have a lot of New York. Oh, good. Eggplant and garlic seems interesting. I wonder if I have an eggplant downstairs. That's something to look at. So awesome. In addition, everyone, if you are interested in audio or you like podcasting, I am the host of the Branders Magazine Talking with Branders podcast, where I'm having just really honest and authentic conversations with the minds behind some of the world's greatest brands. And so check it out. And as Kevin said earlier, I'm also an adjunct professor at Drexel University here in Philadelphia, as well as the European Institute of Design in Milano, where I am an international instructor, where I usually go out about once a year and guide. And we got more people: pepperoni, burrata. You can never have too much mushroom, says Mark. Are those special mushrooms, or are those just the normal mushrooms? Microdosing is allowed. All right. All right, everyone. As you could tell, I'm about energy. I'm about, I have kissed the Blarney Stone in Ireland, and one might say I do have the gift of gab. But really, for me, everything boils down to this idea of stories and the power that stories has on us as human beings. I love this quote from Steve Jobs. Right, we all admire Steve Jobs for his unwavering ability to innovate, his his don't say no attitude, and his way that he was just able to think differently and bring that mentality into an organization. And he says the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation that is to come. And that's so powerful in today's world where, let's face it, we all have the ability to not only tell stories, but tell stories in mass because of social media, because of what we're doing here with video, because of what Big Voo is able to, provide everyone. And so that's not something, that's a huge responsibility for us. And, Steve was ahead of his time by thinking of this, but really this is ancient. This is what our forefathers and our ancestors of the past, how they passed down all of their knowledge to us. Seth Godin, who is such a prolific thinker in the marketing world, and if you don't sign up for his daily newsletter, I hope you do. Although you should also sign up for mine. Hint, hint. Link coming. But he says marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make, but about the stories you tell. And you can think about that. And as you start to reflect on this quote, the brands that we all love and purchase from over and over again, for the most part, tell you the stories that relate to you. That's why Apple has amassed such a tribe. It's why brands like Liquid Death are able to do what they do, because they're telling you stories, right? They're not just talking to you about water, but they're telling you about what their packaging strategy does for the environment. They're telling you about their arch nemesis, the evil layer of plastic, right? So they're telling you all these stories, but doing it in such a way that is not like how we think of stories. It's not just the novel flipping the pages and nausea 400 pages. No, short stories and really engaging ones. Ultimately, we are human beings, right? We are hardwired for stories. Stories have been part of us from the very beginning, from our ancient roots, wherever you think that that came from. They have been part of us because they help us to understand really complex ideas, right? It's not enough to just say to the little kid, don't put your hand in the fire, it's hot. No, let me tell you about the time that I put my hand in the fire and I burned myself and I couldn't go to school and I couldn't ride my bike and I couldn't do this. It's these stories that make it resonate with our audience. Also, stories evoke emotions. It's why when around Christmas time, we all sit around the fire, or we all think that we do, right? We sit around the fire and we read "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," right? And it's emotion. There's mixture of anticipation for what happens tomorrow, mixed with nostalgia of what the reader or what the reader is thinking about from their childhood. And these emotions come out. And all stories do that. Think about if you're putting your son or daughter to bed at night and you tell them a story. You're helping to calm their emotions. You're helping to let them know everything is going to be okay. And also, stories help us prompt action. Again, let me tell you about that time I stuck my hand in the fire. What happened? Hopefully, the action that you're going to take is not to put your hand in the fire. But if you do put your hand on the fire, let me tell you how to take it out real quick. Or what about that time that maybe 100,000 years ago when we were on the Serengeti, or we were just hunter gatherers and we got chased by the woolly mammoth, and now the leader of the clan had to take the youngest person on their back and run away so they didn't get eaten. Right? There's action there. It's prompting that. So over eons and generations, these stories are just innate to us. It's why we gravitate towards them. It's why we love going to movies. It's why podcasting series, like a podcast series, has become so popular. We want to hear stories. We love stories. Yeah. Stories invoke everything, about us every day. And again, it's not just those long stories. There's 1,000 different kind of stories. So if you're a brand, if you're a personal brand, or you're a nonprofit, or even a corporate world, stories belong in every piece of your business. Stories belong part of your messaging and part of your narrative. You can't just be functional messaging all the time. You need to mix in emotion. You need to mix in that other part that we can relate to on a human way.
That resonates. It resonates, and it takes me back a while, Stephen, to the pre-television days when we used to sit in front of the radio and we used to listen to the stories that were being told on the radio.
That's right.
It was such an amazing, a really powerful experience to listen to this audio that didn't have the additional advantage that we have today of video to really convey our stories and really show the emotions, the person's face, and like you say, your dynamism, which we really feel, your energy, which brings that forth. Would you say that the story kind of has a lot of different aspects which can be related to, like Steve Jobs' vision of the future, or marketing, or product, even product related, or history, like you say, history, or to send a message, to send a moral message, or whatever we want to convey?
Yeah, I mean, stories are, and I think a lot of organizations don't realize how paramount stories are to scaling, to acquiring new customers, even better, to retaining customers. So the lifetime value of your organization could very much be attributed to the stories that you tell them. And are you just telling stories, or are you also listening to the stories coming to you? Right? It's a two-way. It's a two-way street. And so, because facts alone aren't just going to cut it. Right. And especially now when, we don't know sometimes what the truth is. Right. So this is a fascinating statistic from Stanford that says, research indicates that stories can be up to 22 times. That's 22x, everyone, more memorable than just facts alone. That's why if you're looking at a product and they're just giving you, feature, feature benefit, and it's not relatable, more than likely you might abandon that product to go to a brand that maybe has more storytelling on their packaging,
Mhm.
or has an ad that you've seen that talked to you in a certain way. It's such a powerful thing that
That's
we can't alienate.
That's amazing. And that brings me to my question. How can modern brands, how can they take these stories where they come from traditional sectors or other sectors, and how can they adapt them to their hero's journey, to fit the narrative, without, making it real? How can they make their stories real, that it fits the brand and it doesn't come across as somebody trying to sell you something?
No, that's such a great question. And we're going to get to the hero's journey in a little bit. Ultimately, what it comes down to is the story is not tremendous, right? I think too many people think of story and they ultimately start thinking about, Ulysses and the Odyssey, right? This massive story filled up ups and downs and turns, but stories can be 30 seconds. Right? Stories can be 15 seconds. That's why oftentimes when I'm consulting with large brands on how do we, distribute your content, and maybe there is a 1 minute hero piece of content. Well, how do we make a bunch of 15 seconds and 30 seconds out of this? Right. And so it's really this idea of, and we'll get into it later on, Kevin, but like creating emotional vignettes, right? Think of this term vignette as really the opportunity to create little bite-sized, fun little nuggets of content, right? Those little stories that just, oh, that's awesome. And doesn't even have to say much. It could just be a visual that makes somebody think of a story,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
that'll do it. So
Okay, so
let's
it's
get
really
started. You bring up
go ahead.
a great thing, Kevin. Let's get to the starting point here because this is going to tie it all together. And I see someone from San Diego. All right, I used to live in San Diego for many years. Shout out. The starting point, everyone. Let's start with a tale of two ads. The first one is on a building that looks like, it's on some kind of back alley, in not maybe the nicest part of the city. And it's from a brand called Patagonia that we might all know. Build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis, Patagonia. But in a way, I feel like they're calling me to action. Like yeah, Bill, I want to buy the best product, and I would love a product that doesn't cause any unnecessary harm, and inspire and implement solutions. That the environmental crisis is a thing, and we're all experiencing it. Right? Patagonia is telling us a story without saying "once upon a time." Next, we have a super functional laundry detergent ad. And all they're telling us here are some features, or actually some benefits, right? Actually, a little bit of both. Bright and white. Apparently, that's what my clothes are going to be. Well, what if I have colored clothes? Free of dyes and perfumes. That's good. I appreciate that. And a stain remover. I would expect my laundry detergent to have a stain remover. Again, this range here, and this is ridiculous on by design. Everyone, these ads do not belong anywhere near each other, right? But what I'm trying to illuminate here is one is just going super functional, trying to sell a product, and it's just really transactional, and the other one is trying to, as Apple would do, get you to think a little bit differently about the products you buy. So this is where we enter the classic hero's journey. We all may have heard this in one way, shape, or form. We all may understand. We all may understand parts of it, right? We have a character who gets called to action, and right then they meet a helper of some sort after a big catastrophe, and they die. Right, there's a death, but out of that death comes a rebirth, and there becomes atonement. Then you return. Like it's complicated, right? It's made for more lengthy stories. It's made for Ulysses and the Odyssey. It's made for, you know, some of these other long form pieces of content, movies and novels. but it's not so great to capture attention quickly. In our always on content cluttered world, this could become super confusing because there's a lot of steps to the classic hero's journey. So, in theory, this is right and this is good. And this is something we all should know and use every day. In practicality, it's not really going to work. So, enter the story brand framework. Now, if you're familiar, and you very well might be with this framework, it was made popular by Donald Miller. He's got a great podcast out there. He's got a marketing book out there. He's got a couple books out there, but he's a proponent on the story brand framework, which is a similar arc to the hero's journey, but it's adapted for more modern day. So what happens here, and the big shift for everyone, and actually before we go in, I see a couple of people on how, let me know if you've heard of Donald Miller and the story brand framework. Diane has, and I'm sure other people have as well. So if you're in the chat, put it in the chat if you've heard of Donald Miller and story brand and what your experience may have been with it. So the big switch here, right, from normal everyday thinking to what the story brand says, and I'm sorry to burst some of your bubbles if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, but your business is not the hero. As a brand consultant, I have a lot of companies coming up to me, and the two biggest misconceptions or challenges I get when people come up to me, number one is they're like, I need branding help. I need a new logo. Branding is not your logo. Different conversation for a different time. And number two is, well, I want to be the hero for my customers, and I want to be everything to my customers, and that is faulty thinking when it comes to building a brand narrative, especially online, especially as we start to look at video. Why? Because you are not the hero in this story. Your customers are. Your customers are the hero. They are the character right here. So if you're looking at this framework on the very left, a character, your customer has a problem, whatever that problem might be, and they meet a guide. Aha, that guide, let's just call the guide Mr. Miyagi for right now, is you, the brand who solves the problem. Because that's what you want to be. You want to be the problem solver to your brand. And gives them a plan. Mr. Miyagi gave a plan to Daniel-san. And that plan was to do all these things so he could beat the Cobra Kai. And he calls them to action, right? He called Daniel to action. And he showed him in a way, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. But if you do follow the plan, this is what's going to happen. And so it's a way to reframe your thinking when it comes to brand narrative. And if this sounds familiar, like, wait a second, like, I get it, but what are some other examples? Well, we'll get back to it. Let's look at Star Wars, a film we all know and a lot of us love, but we have a character, Luke Skywalker, who has a problem. The evil empire is after him, and he meets a guide. He meets Obi-Wan, and he meets Yoda, who gives him the opportunity to trust the Force and to call him to action, to fight to success. Or if you want to look at even something that you might even see on TV today, how about Allstate Insurance? A driver gets into an accident and meets a guide. You're in good hands with Allstate, who gives them the plan to go to allstate.com to file your free claim or whatever, and results in this person resuming everyday normalcy, right? So the story brand framework is one that could be a multi-part feature film like Star Wars, or a brand like Allstate could achieve that in probably a 15-second spot. Powerful. So,
amazing that you put those films into perspective and just the mechanism, to simplify the mechanism and take it for us and put the customer in the spotlight. The customer is the hero, and the customer that obviously gives the customer the sentiment that the product's there for him and not there for themselves to sell the product and just benefit from.
We don't want to be sold to anymore, Kevin. Like, people are tired of being sold to on problems they don't necessarily have. But like, when a brand knows their lane, here's another perfect example. I just helped launch the new Dude Wipes campaign. If you're familiar with Dude Wipes, they are made for male. Flushable butt wipes. It's going to say it what it is. And they solve a specific problem for men. Well, we went and created a campaign that was all about not making Dude Wipes the hero, but making their customers the hero and how they solve the solution. So this any brand can fall into this framework. And I see a couple of questions popping up about this sector or that sector. And I'll share some more examples throughout the presentation on different sectors and different categories on how this framework can really be leveraged no matter where you are.
Yeah. So we got a question, in fact, which I'll bring in now, perhaps, I think it may be relevant, is that Michael Korn asks basically what about the questions of integrity and honesty in storytelling.
It is there's a quote from Marcus Aurelius that says, stop talking about being a good man and just be one. I've adapted it towards branding. Stop talking about being an authentic brand and just be one, right? Your actions, everything you do needs to scream authenticity. So if you are doing something that's inauthentic, or if you're double talking your customers, or you're doing anything that, might be seen as insincere, then you could tell the greatest stories in the world. People are still going to see through you. Look at the politicians. They talk about all this sincerity and everything that they're going to do, but all their actions prove differently. So, Michael, it's a great question, and time and consistency become the two biggest the two things that not only are we going to talk about, so thank you for the segue, but that's what allows these stories to always be honest. But I'm also really curious, and what industry doesn't require a lot of integrity and honesty? So I'm curious in what industry you might be in. You could let me know in the chat.
Stephen, would you say that that's a question of transparency or alignment? In other words, if your values are aligned with your what you projecting, or if you're transparent and you're honest about what happens, even if you do project something else, but let's say in the service industry, we do a lot of service on our side, and we say, we give you great service, great support in there, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So how can you fit that into a story?
Yeah. You use those times of failure to your advantage, right? You own up to it. Perhaps there's a way to poke fun, a little tongue in cheek about it. Perhaps as long as you're rectifying the situation and doing right ultimately. But there's something really human about saying, I effed up. I'm sorry. But this is how I'm going to make it up in the future. I think a lot of brands think they have to be perfect all the time. And, of course, if you're a food brand, your product needs to be perfect all the time. You don't want to be poisoning people. But the biggest brands in the world make communication errors every day. Oprah Winfrey's O Network puts out social posts that have misspellings or a misquote. With the rate of content out there, it's damn near impossible to be perfect. And let's be real, as consumers, we don't necessarily want perfect. Perfect's not relatable. I don't even Michelangelo, when he designed David, made David imperfect for a reason, because perfection isn't a thing. It doesn't exist. So I'm not giving us all the liberty to get real sloppy with our brand. We need to control as much as we can, but we need to give ourselves, the brand, have a little bit of grace. And this is one of the reasons, Kevin, a lot of my consulting with brands, and used to be, we're going to design brand guidelines, and we're going to guidelines were the thing, right? Rigid guidelines, and kind of taking a step back and saying, I think it's more about an operating system now. It needs to be fluid, right? Our consumers are fluid, and to approach fluid consumers with rigid rigid guidelines, it's a little bit of too much tension that may not be great. So instead, let's create an operating system where it allows the flexibility to flex with our customers. And that's really, really important. And the stories that we tell, you know, also, we're allowed to also flex a little bit. It's allowed to be a little, we're allowed to be creative in that sense. And I have some more, so I have some
Yeah,
I
sure.
have
Go
some
around it.
more examples coming up, but it really
Excellent.
brings us, Kevin, to this next part. Excuse me. Now that we know who our hero is, how do we connect with our hero? I love this little cartoon here, right? Franziska received a present for her birthday. She unwraps it and thinks, wow, it's a great present. Matilda holds up a trophy and laughs. She thinks I've won. Jonathan lays on the meadow and thinks, what a great day is today. Everything worked out the way I had wished. So, what I'm showing you all here is emotional vignettes, right? The little stories that just kind of paint the picture, right? Little stories. Jonathan laying there. We all can understand what that feels like when everything just seems to go your way, or when you come in first place, or you win that prize, or when you get that unexpected present, right? These are all little feelings, little bloop, bloop, bloop feelings that we're getting, but they're all wrapped in a little story. So this is how we connect with our audience. It's through emotions, right? And it's through emotional vignettes, really short stories, right? Short, evocative pieces that capture the essence of a brand or product in a brief yet impactful manner. Last year, I worked on the new campaign from Holland America, and it was titled Time of Your Life. And kind of the tagline was have the time of your life, time and time again. So we had a beautiful 30-second hero spot that we produced on ship. And then we created a lot of, I would say, 8, 9, 10, 15-second vignettes to highlight a certain thing. Could be a service feature, could be a shore excursion, it could be a destination. And we had all these little stories that we told. And we were able to put those stories on social all over the place and run advertising behind it. And they were so impactful because we got to personalize it towards audiences. We live in an amazing time, everyone, where personalization is everything. So we can say, well, for this kind of consumer, this is the kind of stories that they're going to gravitate towards. They're empty nesters and, they have disposable income and they love going to Europe and they want to eat really well. Great. We all know the kind of stories those are. Or the Caribbean kind of cruiser, or maybe this older couple who wants to go see Alaska because it's on their bucket list. Think about those little emotional stories that we can create. So when brands out there are creating 15-second, snippets of larger campaigns, what they're doing is they're connecting with their audience through emotional vignettes. And by focusing on these raw, relatable emotions, happiness, jubilee, nostalgia, joy, hurt, and pain, right? These vignettes force a really, really deep connection with the viewer, and it leaves a tremendously large, lasting impression. And this is why through our brand recall on Holland America, we've seen that they are really resonating with our audience and with with our end users. Next, now that we're connecting with our heroes, how do we keep it up? That seems exhausting to keep it up. Well, it's about building brand recall through a consistency and narrative. And I believe, Marco, your question earlier was in an industry that thrives on honesty and transparency. How do you do it? It's here. It's through this notion of being consistent. And it's one of the hardest things to do in 2023, moving into 2024, because we are jaded by shiny, bright new objects. AI this, blockchain that, metaverse, robotics, whatever it is, there's always something new. where brands are just abandoning their strategy, making a hard right turn and saying, we're going all in with, meta threads. Great. What happened? Of course you get hot out of the gate and then, you kind of fizzle out. There's a lot of brand touch points out there. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There are other graphs that show hundreds, if not thousands, of brand touch points when you start to think about in the field, in the wild, online, forums, everything. It could be so exhausting and it could be so overwhelming. So you don't want to necessarily repeat the same stories on every platform. When you're choosing your platform and you want to remain consistent, you got to remember that you want to try to repeat the same kind of themes. This is why for Holland America, the themes were all around the same. A couple on a cruise, walking down the staircase, the same kind of vibe, the same tonality from a brand perspective, right? You can't have two competing stories out there, one that's a really empathetic tone of voice and the other one that's passive aggressive. That's going to alienate your audience and you're going to come out tone deaf. To maintain consistency, you have to maintain consistency. But you also don't want to just regurgitate the same 5 stories, the same 5 spots, the same 5 narratives over and over again. People are going to get bored and move on to your competitor. And also the same values. You always need to make sure the common thread through all your narratives are those values that you hold so dear as a brand. Because to Marco's question earlier, maintaining consistency and keeping with this is how you're going to win over time, right? You can't, once again, abandon all your values, have a whole different tone, and change the theme for one specific audience group. You're going to come off again as tone deaf. And being tone deaf in 2023 as a brand is a surefire way to lose market position and to not seem relevant. So as brands expand, you think of a brand like Coca-Cola, where they have thousands of stories happening across the globe in so many different languages, but there's such a consistent tone and value, vibe, look and feel to them that it doesn't matter where you go in the world or what language you speak. When you see a Coca-Cola can, you know the story that they're saying, right? A Coca-Cola commercial in Russia is definitely, keeping in line with the brand tone and of keeping in the same values of a spot here in America, even though geopolitically we couldn't be further apart. It shows the power of having this consistent narrative across borders. We were talking earlier about.
I just have a quick question, Stephen. Sorry, just to interrupt you there.
Yeah.
Would you say that consistency is the key to how would you say, approaching different cultures with the same message?
Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Approaching different cultures with a brand is really, really difficult. There's a lot of nuances. Business across borders is very different. You don't go to Japan and expect to shake someone's hand. You know what I mean? So we have to be aware. We have to be, hyper empathetic towards these different cultures. But by keeping the tone and keeping the values and just adapting it or evolving it to connect with that culture is a great way to get that message across. But it's also about being consistent. That message can't look drastically different than the message in the home country. As an example might be, let's use Coca-Cola. The font of Coca-Cola can't look drastically different in English than it does in Arabic, even though the characters are completely different. Arabic is more calligraphy, but they were intentional about making that consistent because it's going to aid in what I'm calling brand recall. And if you go to the slide right now, Kevin, you'll see that it's equating to brand recall, and that's what we want. There are studies done. We do them in advertising agencies all the time. After a spot has been, pushed out, doing it for Dude Wipes, Holland America. Quantitatively, how much more do you recall the brand now after these spots? And we want it to be higher, right? We don't just want to be recognized, right? So you see the dotted line. Brand recognition is great. It's better than non-recognition, but we want to always gear towards preference and loyalty. Loyalty is where you achieve lifetime value. Loyalty is where you achieve almost evangelism from your audience, and you amassed a tribe that will do everything for you. Don't believe me? Think about Lululemon, the loyal fans that they have. Think about a sock company like Bombas. I am currently wearing Bombas, right? They have my loyalty. And I will actually speak about how great their customer service was, because I did buy a pair and my toe blew right through it. And I called them up and I said, my toe blew through the sock that I just bought. And what did they do? They sent me a whole new package of 3 socks. And these aren't cheap socks. But from that point on, I'm like, loyalty. Now, if you're a brand and you have not reached loyalty, actually, here's an interesting story. Let's take the grocery category. Grocery category is really interesting because the majority of grocers out there are just competing on price, very functional messagings of savings, 2 for 1. And then they're fighting for the same customers. But then you get a brand like Trader Joe's or Aldi that comes into the mix. And they're like, no, we're not even going to touch price. We'll let you all battle it out, but we're going to win on experience. We're going to win on inside the store, how our employees act towards you, or how we, engage with children. And brand recall, you just see it going up, 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 because they're connecting with their audience on an emotional level. And so that just equates to Trader Joe's doesn't have to advertise, but if they did, they'd have some pretty unique stories, but their brand loyalty's through the roof. There are a lot of, I only shop at Trader Joe's, and if it's not there, I'm not eating it. And that is the ultimate goal here. All right. So, Steven, how the hell do we do this all without feeling forced or salesy? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like this? Yeah, you don't want to feel like that. We don't want to feel like a snake oil salesman. You don't want to feel like Danny DeVito, even though he's one of my favorite actors. Listen, everyone, every brand has unique attributes. My job as a brander to help bring those attributes out and help you recognize them. But whether they're product-specific selling propositions or overarching brand values or just really good reasons to believe, and I love having diaper up here. Like my son, we use diaper, and I love those 4 icons and those reasons, those kind of like product-specific USPs, I guess you could say them, right? Trickle to blowout, ready for anything. Definitely have experienced a couple blowouts in my day. Yoga pant fit for your wild child, whether speaking directly to my wife who loves her yoga pants. Plant packed with less yuck. I don't want any yuck, and I don't want to put yuck on my newborn. So yeah, I'm into it. And kinder to the home we all share. Holy shit, you just like tugged on my emotional strength, right? So they did a brilliant job of telling you a great story, leveraging their packaging. And it doesn't even have a once upon a time and a to be continued and anything, but they just knew that, hey, as the guide, as the diaper company should be the guide, let me enable the hero, my customers, to understand what I'm going to provide them. And here's the plan. We're going to make you ready for anything, and we're going to really give you some snug fit so you don't have that blowout. And we're good for the environment, and we know that you really appreciate plant-based. And we all could appreciate less yuck. I don't think any of us want more yuck. Brilliant right over here, right? This is how you do it without being salesy. You just be real, and you just talk to your audience in their tone, in their language, because you are not the hero. You are the guide to the hero. And then you want to weave those USPs into your brand story and making it genuine as well as persuasive. So look at Bomba socks here. We mentioned them earlier. Their biggest differentiator is this notion of you buy one, we give one. Because homeless shelter, the big insight for their brand, if you don't know, is they realized that, across the world, but specifically in New York City, that the number one most requested items in homeless shelters are socks. So following what the Tom Shoe model and the Zappos model and the Warby Parker model, you buy a pair of Bombas, we're going to donate a pair of Bombas. And that giant value and that giant unique selling proposition is all they need to do on an ad. And now this is completely authentic. And because it doesn't have a fancy headline and persuasive copy, it almost does more to us as a consumer. Like, yes, because if you know, you know. And it should feel organic and not forced. The Dove Real Beauty campaign is, I can't go a couple days without this coming up in one way, shape, or form, whether it's with the client or another brander. But what they were able to do on just bringing the real, right? We were talking earlier that perfection doesn't necessarily have a place anymore. The Dove Real Beauty campaign is one of those reasons, why when this campaign hit a couple years ago, it just blew the market apart. It caused so many new fans and new purchasers to Dove, but it also just gave their target audience the permission to be real and the permission to be
Be
themselves.
yourself. Absolutely.
So how do we keep conflict? How do we keep it fresh? Right? Like, this is great. I'm totally bought in, but does this start to get a little bit like meh over time? Sure, if you're telling the same stories, then a big way to combat that is conflict and resolution. When we all love it, it's a big part of what makes humans humans. Because every compelling story has a conflict and a resolution. Often in the marketing brand world, that conflict is the problem and the problem is what the problem your customers have, right? And that's what we want to identify and talk to and market the solution, because conflicts create tension. They create intrigue, right? That's why we have cliffhangers at the end of TV shows. Find out what happens next week on The Bachelor. Right? We just saw this big tension-filled fight, and now they're leaving us with a cliffhanger. I have to go online and post about it, and now you have the engagement. And of course, that's such a drastic analogy, but brands do this all the time, where they are, and they're doing it in ways where they're selling the problem, not the product. And this is great for dude wipes. I had mentioned them earlier. We're not necessarily selling the 7x7 flushable wipe. We're selling the problem of, hey, man, do you have skid marks on your underwear? Right? And you're going to see a lot of women. Yeah, my kids do. The husband does. Even the dog has them, right? Like, we're selling the problem right there, not the product. The product just alleviates the problem. And thanks for having fun with me, everyone. Like, I'm sure you're all laughing on the other end. And so much Let's keep going. The ultimate problem solver. So when you solve the problem that your customers have as the hero, as the guide, you're creating that kind of narrative arc, right? And that's what we want to be able to get. Like, that problem-solving mentality is that arc. You are the guide. I'm going to show you that plan, right, of how to solve the problem. No one was better at that than MacGyver. He was the ultimate problem solver. Give him anything, and he could do anything with it. And if you don't know who MacGyver is, and if I'm dating myself, there's probably a new version of it on Netflix, but the old version is definitely where it's at. Great example of this is Airbnb, right? They had a big problem on acceptance, right? There a diversity within the Airbnb platform, and and how their biggest issue was kind of like this societal issue of belonging. So they created a campaign called We Accept, and it positioned their brand as this solution to, we're not a bunch of different, we are all one, right? So no matter who you are, where you're from, who you love, or who you worship, we all belong. The world is more beautiful the more you accept. And it was a brilliantly done campaign. And it pulled on all these little mini vignettes of these people, these little mini stories that come together to form a larger story. So this is a really creative and compelling way to take many multiple little vignettes to form a larger vignette, or a larger vignette to smaller ones, all under the same campaign guise or the campaign strategy. So now what? And I'll pause here because we are getting to the end. And Kevin, wow, I timed it perfectly. I didn't even know I was going to do
Absolutely,
it.
absolutely. Absolutely. So it's been a privilege to be with you today, Stephen. It's been so interesting. I'd like to just let our audience know if they have any questions for Stephen, please pop them into the chat so that Stephen can address them at this point in time. And we've learned so much. There's just so much to ingest. There's so much energy, positive energy, and Stephen's turned a lot of things upside down, which I think is good for us. I think we've learned a lot that being ourselves is not so bad, and our stories as well. Whether the story be from the side of the customer, or whether it be the company that comes to provide the solution for our hero, the customer. We've got a very varied perspective of how we should be looking at our brands and our stories to bring them across, without making the mistake of selling
Yeah.
instead of providing the solution. And I think that really fits in with the last campaign that you mentioned from Airbnb, in that we are one is really, this. If we look at our user base, even as Big View, we have such a wide, varied user base, people from all different sectors, from real estate, from coaching, from a paramedical, and just, I think, just to recognize the difference that each person, even if your product is maybe, a kind of a generic product and everything, just to recognize the individuality of your users and try and address their specific issue, not necessarily changing the product, but changing how they can use the product in
Exactly.
their.
That's
And that
exactly right.
you made so many things really clear for me personally today. I really feel privileged to have been on this workshop with you, and I'd really like to encourage our audience to send questions. We know we have a fantastic giveaway, which I think I'm going to send you a mail myself for the giveaway, because that was just blow away. And for those of you that they're not going to get the seven 30-minute brand consultations that Stephen is generously offering. I think, on what he gave us in an hour now, personally, on one-on-one, it's going to be a world of rich engagement and learning. So I really
Yeah.
encourage you to reach out to him.
So
We'll put the
Kevin,
details.
I
Sure, go
also
ahead, Stephen.
want to just put out there. So the giveaway, yes. So send me an email and please put giveaway in the subject line. And then I'm going to give away 7 30-minute free consultations on your brand, your storytelling, your brand strategy. For those who don't make one of the 7, I will be giving you all the non-marketer's guide to branding, my downloadable PDF. It's like a mini ebook, I guess you can call it. I also want to encourage you all, and if we can just go to the next slide.
Absolutely, that's all about branding. That's signing
Yeah,
up for Stephen's.
this is my newsletter. Please scan the QR code It goes to my newsletter landing page, and I send out a weekly newsletter to 7,000 plus business leaders and entrepreneurs and marketers on how to craft better ideas and more impactful campaigns and more compelling customer experiences. So, I definitely encourage you all to go to my website, do some reading, check out the podcast. But please, if nothing else, send me an email, win that free 30-minute session with me. I know that you will leave that session with a lot of value, and hopefully I can answer all your questions.
And to our wonderful audience, thanks so much for joining us today, for your participation. Really appreciate it. And for those of you that will be seeing it on replay, you'll also get the chance to qualify for the amazing giveaway. The giveaway will probably only be announced early next week. So reach out to him by email. He'll let you know, and they'll also send you details for any downloads or giveaways that he'll be handing out. So Stephen, this has been the most amazing experience. I also encourage you, in the mail that you send to Stephen, send him a couple of takeaways that you have from this wonderful workshop, things that you've taken. You can send him 1 or 2 takeaways so that he can get some feedback. And really, for me, it's been an amazing experience. His energy, the quality of the content, the perspective, and the way that he looks at things, are a game changer for me. And I'm sure that a one-on-one with Stephen's going to be an amazing experience. So I encourage you to reach out to Stephen for that.
Thank you, Kevin, and to Big Vu. Appreciate it.
Just a big shout out to all our audience, and on the back end, Bruno, who's always there making things happen and making things run smoothly. Bruno's always posting in the chat channel, bringing things out. If any of you have any questions that we haven't addressed them, also reach out directly to Stephen. I'm sure he'd be happy to help you out with that. So thanks all for joining us, and once again, it's been a pleasure to be with you today, Stephen.
Thank you all. Ciao.
All the best. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.
View teleprompter, create videos you're proud of. Easily trim your video by selecting the words where you want to start and end. Color your presentation with automatic subtitles and highlighting keywords. Add your brand logo. Add music for an emotional touch. Add your contact info on an animated business card on all your videos. Easily replace green screen with an image or a video loop. Stand out with a web page with your logo, your video at the center, and personalized button for visitors to interact. It's one tap to simultaneously upload your videos on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Always know what to say next with the Big View teleprompter.